Walking on camera.
I love you, but we're not going near at all. From a distance.
So I'm sorry about the late notice, but it's not because we forgot about you.
Well, this is for you.
Isn't that shalva's camera?
Do you have a digital camera also? Oh, I should have brought.
It's okay.
Malka, say hello.
Do not run
Malka, say hello to your in-laws. Say hello to your in-laws.
Hi. We miss you.
Something that I'm looking for my kids and my heroes.
Thanks, hello.
Right.
The Shapiro's are here. The cats are.
I heard about it. I walked in.
Say hello to Shulman's parents.
A lot more saved. Hi guys, we're short.
Yeah, they're mostly overseas students.
Thanks, hello, man. Are you from the
I
classes,
thought they
man?
had left too to whether or not I should watch.
The bagels, Mazonos.
Wet. Hi. You have to clean your ears.
For their help. There are a lot of people that helped us out a lot over the past 9 days. So I can't mention everyone, but I am going to just mention the people that helped. First of all, that helped set up with the simchat bat. Avi and Shlomi Schwartz aren't here, but thank you to them. And Jack and Sarah Jacobs and Emily and Andy Katz and Avi Zimmerman all came over and helped me set up. And we appreciate it a lot. It was a big help. Ari and Leah Cutler, they were there from before day one and on. Even when they disappeared to Chutzlar for a couple of days, they made sure that a billion people called and asked us if they can help make food and help us while we were, when we first got back home. And Ari and Leah basically orchestrated everything. So thank you everyone for calling and helping and calling Ari and Leah. And Ari and Leah helped us driving to the hospital, back from the hospital. Everything was great. Even though my parents, my family isn't here, and my father-in-law isn't here, our siblings aren't here, but we do miss them. We wish they were here. But thank you very much for my mother-in-law for coming in. We couldn't have done it without her. And I don't think Chana Gross is here, but she was our labor coach. She was great. Anyway, just wrote a few things down here. There's a pasuk in Shmuel, Alat Libi B'Hashem, Rama Karni B'Hashem, and it finishes with Kisimachti B'Shuatacha. This is the tefillah of Chana. After she gave birth, she praised Hashem for giving her the bracha of having children, and that is really what Malka and I are feeling today is really Alat Libi to God. Our heart is rejoicing, and it's really simple for us. Just a couple thoughts that Malka and I put together that we see in this in the parsha we read this morning. That Yosef, when his wife gave birth to his two children, the pasuk says, "B'terem tavo shnat harav." That it happened right before the shnat harav, right before the famine began. And Rashi tells us, he quotes the Gemara in Tani that says that you're not supposed to have children during a famine, during hard times. And so Yosef clearly was trying to. We learn from Yosef's actions. Yosef was trying to set a standard. When you have children, it should not be during very difficult times. But we see on the other hand that in Sefer Shemot, the Chazal tell us that Amram, Moshe's father, he separated from his wife Yocheved when things were very tough. The Jewish people were in slavery, and Miriam went over to her father and said, "What are you doing? You have two children, but by you separating and all the Jewish people following your lead, Paro only had an edict against the Jewish Zcharim, the boys. And by you separating, you're also stopping Nekevot from being born. So you are you were basically stopping the Jewish people from having any children. And Amram heeded the advice of his daughter, and he reunited with his wife. And from the reunification of Amram and Yocheved, Moshe was born, and through Moshe, the Yeshua, the salvation, was brought about. And so we see that Yosef and Miriam had two different approaches. So, but what we can suggest is that if we look at for a section in the textual base of where Yosef was holding when he had his two children, he had them before the Ra'av. The Psukim are discussing all the preparations he did for the famine. He set up storehouses and he set aside the food, and he had a whole system that he worked out. And then he told him in the middle of these Psukim, he talks about him having his two children. So what Malk and I think might be a connection is that maybe he was having these children for himself, from a personal and a psychological preparation for the famine. There's the food preparation, there's the storehouse preparation, and then for the Jewish people to know that times are tough now, but we're going to get on by having children. And the children is the glimmer of hope for the future. So Miriam was suggesting this to her father clearly as well. Things are tough, there's slavery, but we need to continue, we need to have Jewish children. From a similar idea, we see there's a classic question for Hanukkah. We just finished Hanukkah this afternoon, but we thought we'd include it anyway. There's a classic question of if the flask of oil that the Maccabim found could really last for one day, and the miracle was that it lasted 8 days, so the actual miracle was really only 7 days. This is a question that's been asked over the ages. Why is it that we celebrate 8 days, we say Hallel 8 days, we light 8 candles, if the miracle was really only 7 days? So a similar idea to what we were discussing with Miriam and Yosef is that when the Maccabim re-sanctified the Beit HaMikdash and they went into the Heichal, they could have easily said, you know what, the Beit HaMikdash has been desecrated for a while, we haven't been able to light the menorah, we haven't been able to offer korbanot, and so let's try to clean it up as much as we can, and we'll wait until we can have oil. But they decided not to give up, and they said, we're going to look high and low until we find whatever we can. And what they found one flask. And that flask was enough for one day. But that initiative that they took, in of itself, was both a miracle and a reason to celebrate. Because here we see the Jewish people are reaching out towards God, and God responded with salvation. He responded with a nace. And that's what we're celebrating. We're celebrating 1 day of the actual human initiative, and the 7 days of the nace, of the continued burning of the oil. And so that with what we see with Miriam telling her father to reunite, to say, you have to do what you have to do. What you have to do is continue having Jewish children, even though it's hard times, and God will take care of the rest. And so too with Yosef. Yosef knew that the famine was about to begin, so he made sure that he had his children beforehand, because Hilchati, that must be the best way. But also, bottom line is you still have to do what you have to do, and God will take care of the rest. And specifically during these times, unfortunately, the Jewish people have been going through some hard times the past couple of years, and but we still think that it's appropriate, it's important that we come to Israel, we move to Israel, we live in Israel, we have children in Israel, and to reproduce and to have many children to build the Jewish people. And we see also, repeating again, the end of the pasuk that Chana mentioned was, Ki simachti b'shuatecha. He said, God, my heart rejoices and my horn is exalted because Ki simachti b'shuatecha, because I'm happy with your salvation. So God brought the salvation through Moshe with the slavery, and He brought the salvation with Yosef. Eventually the famine ended very soon after. And God willing, He will bring the salvation to the Jewish people in the present day. I just want to discuss our daughter's name for a couple minutes. We named her Shalva Chana. And I'll just start with her second name first. Chana comes from three different sources. One is Malka's great-grandmother, Chana Linderman, my mother-in-law's grandmother, and she she was a great woman. She died only right before Malka was born, actually, and she was always caring for other people, and she never had anything harsh to say to anyone, even when she did get upset, which was infrequently. She was the glue that kept the family together. She was very focused on family oriented, and she was also she came from Europe and she moved to Israel with her husband, and she lived here in the late teens, and once again, sure enough, there was a famine in Israel, and she had to actually leave Israel, and it was tearing her heart out to move to Chutz La'aretz, and she moved to America, but even when she left Israel, she had so much chibat haaretz that she founded a group in Chicago of Benos Eretz Yisrael, as it was called. Beautiful Ashkenazis in Chicago for chibat haaretz, but they had this group where every week they would get together and they would send funds to people in Eretz Yisrael. And we thought that this was a beautiful way of making full circle of having our daughter named after her great-great-grandmother, who she herself, her focus was always on Eretz Yisrael. And we hope that's an Aliyah Neshama. The second source, the second reason we chose the name Chana, was my grandfather, my father's father. Before he married my grandmother, he had a wife and 3 daughters. They were all killed in the Holocaust in Auschwitz. And because it was such a hard time, once again, unfortunately, hard times with the famine, with the Holocaust, constantly hard times for the Jewish people, unfortunately. He really closed that part of that chapter of his life behind him when he remarried. They survived. They survived. They moved to America, and he really didn't discuss he mentioned that he had 3 daughters, but he really wouldn't discuss their names. And for years, my father and my aunt had been trying to discover their names, and they came across one name somehow through all their research, and her Polish name was Anya. So we can guess that her name was Chana. And since we've only discovered her name recently, this was the first opportunity for someone to be named after her. So hopefully that our daughter should also be Schut for Aliyah Neshama for my aunt. And finally, we have it happened to be, we were deciding between Chana and another name. And another person important in our family that we wanted to name after. But she was born about 20 minutes before Erev Hanukkah. So we decided Chana, for the story of Hanukkah, just fit too well, so we decided on Chana. But seriously, we see that actually Chana's commitment to Am Yisrael, her Mesira Nefesh, her and her sons that were ready to give up their lives for the Jewish people and for their commitment to Am Yisrael, is something that we hope that our daughter can take upon herself and commit herself to Am Yisrael. And similarly, her first name, which is a name that we chose because we hope, first of all, as a schut for the Jewish people and for Eretz Yisrael, there should be shalva, there should be tranquility and serenity for the Jewish people, and for specifically the Jewish people in Israel who are going through some hard times. And we can learn a lot from these different sources that we discussed. That God willing, that God should bring the Yeshua to both Am Yisrael and to Eretz Yisrael. And finally, before I made a bunch of thank yous before, but there are 2 thank yous left that I want to make, and one is to Malka, because she's been amazing. She's really no complaints, and she's a powerhouse in the delivery room. And she's an amazing mother. And the second thank you is, that's why we're having this dinner, is a Sudat Hoda'ah, and thank you to God. Because there was one point towards the end of the delivery where things got a little scary for not more than a minute, and thank God everything turned out okay. But I was hyperventilating. And when the nurse picked up the baby and she was like, "Oh, do you want to hold her?" I'm like, I have to find a seat for her. I was going crazy. So really, thank God, Baruch Hashem, and it's really what this Suda is for, is to show our hoda'ah and our gratitude to God. And finally, we know from God willing that our daughter should be a schut for the Jewish people. That we see in Mincha and Shabbat. We say, Menuchat Ava Midava, we're talking about Avraham, Yagel, Yitzchak, and Renan, is always talking about in the future. So Avraham and Yitzchak and Yaakov, that they will be there, in the future is clearly talking about the salvation, talking about the Yeshua, when God is going to bring the Mashiach, and we'll have salvation. And we see Menuchat Ava Midava, Menuchat Emet Ve'amuna, Menuchot Shalom v'Shalva Hashkefa Pesach. God willing, we should see salvation and Yeshua Bezrat Hashem B'Karov. Thank you for coming.
Let's sing it. Hey, start song.